This is a psychological war by the powers that be. They want to extract as much wealth as possible from you. And I think holding on to what they view as money is the best thing. Saturday, March 2nd, 2024, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So today we're going to do an update on gold and the major fiat currencies. Most of you, or a lot of you, probably noticed that the major fiat currencies closed at new weekly lows versus gold, or gold closed at new weekly all-time highs yesterday. So gold had a very good day. Of course, silver is still lagging, but I think eventually silver will more than catch up. And I'm going to reference a few, one of my articles I wrote back in 2007 about the topic. I'm going to reference a book that talks about one of the reasons why I've known for a long time that this was going to happen. And it's not because I have a crystal ball, and you'll see why. And I'm going to look at Bitcoin, because I'm sure a lot of you out there are going to say, well, the major currencies have been making new lows versus Bitcoin. And yeah, I'll give you my argument on that. And I'm going to reference a book, and I'm going to reference also a very interesting battle or campaign that happened during the Napoleonic Wars. And hopefully you will understand what I mean. How can I compare Bitcoin to like a campaign or a battle? But bear with me. So, as I said, I've been warning people for many years, ever since I started looking into the topic of gold, fiat currency. Yes, our current monetary system, of course, central banking. And that was back almost 25 years ago already that I started looking into that, the early 2000s, and especially after I started buying physical gold and silver for that matter. And I warned colleagues, of course, out of a few hundred colleagues that I had, for example, at MF Global, only a few listened. Prior to that, of course, I was at ABN AMRO, didn't have as many colleagues. It wasn't such a big futures and options brokerage operation, but a few listened, a few wanted to hear what I had to say, and I think a few started stacking. But yeah, so what I'm going to do here is reference this article that I wrote, and I used to keep a blog back in the day when I was still working in the city of London in the financial sector. And it was called forsoundmoney.com. I started it, I think, back in 2006, maybe 2005, before the '08 crisis, because I could see it coming and I was warning people. And I don't keep that blog anymore. It's not there, but marketoracle.co.uk published a few of my articles from that blog. And I've got here currencies. They're all sinking part 2. I couldn't find part 1. I might be able to find it, but this will suffice, I think. And this is from April 24th, 2007. So almost 17 years ago. So yes, this is a long-term thing. It's the big trade, in my opinion, even though really gold and silver are money, but it's going to act like a big trade, in my opinion. And that's why I've stuck with it. So this is what I said last December, so December 2006. We wrote in They Are All Sinking about how our present monetary system is a dollar-based system and how it has evolved. We also noted how all major so-called hard currencies, along with the dollar, had been losing value against gold since 2001. In part 2, we will be giving an update on how the major fiat currencies are faring against gold at the present time. We feel that there's a great deal being made of the demise of the dollar, while there is, on the other hand, a great deal been made of the $2 a pound sterling. Yes, we got above 2 back then, pound sterling, and the $1.36 euro. Focusing on dollar weakness alone is, in our opinion, a mistake, because in the end of the day, all major fiat currencies are being inflated and as a result losing purchasing power versus real goods, services, and assets. As gold has been the currency with the best track record over the last few thousand years, and as a result has maintained purchasing power, we find it appropriate to compare government-imposed currencies with the yellow metal. And I'm going to stop for a second here and talk about, at the time, the dollar is very weak when I wrote this. And recently, the dollar has been a little stronger. And what do I think about Brent Johnson, his milkshake theory? I think he has a point that the dollar will still be quite strong because it's the major reserve currency. But one thing I have to say, though, if we all know, and I think Brent does know as well, that the dollar will eventually sink versus gold and silver, why stay on the on the Titanic, right? If you know the Titanic is going to sink. Yes, you're seeing all the other smaller vessels sink, and you know that the dollar or the Titanic is going to sink. Why stay there if you know it's going to sink? That's always been my argument. So let's continue. Our latest calculations show that the dollar, the euro, the British pound, the Swiss franc, and the Japanese yen have continued to lose value against gold. Since we last wrote, the dollar price of gold has gone, and this will give you an idea how far we've come, has gone from $618 to $684. Doesn't sound like much, but with a price around 600, a move to 684 was about 10%. Today, which is a gain of 10.68% for gold. Against the euro, gold has gone from 472 to 502 for a gain of 6.35%. Versus the British pound, gold is up to 342 pounds. Amazing, is it? It's not 1,342, it's 342 from 316 for a gain of 8.23%. The Swiss franc has lost 9.15% as gold has risen from 754 to 823. And lastly, against the yen, we have seen gold rally from 73,000 to a present price of 81,100, or a debasement of 11.09% for the Japanese currency. Yeah, keep the yen in mind, because from that article there, you can see that the yen was already leading in terms of debasement. And some of you already know where the gold price of yen is, but for those of you who don't, you'll be shocked. As can be seen, talk of death of the dollar is only partly true. We feel that it is more appropriate to talk of the demise of the fiat monetary system, and with it, the death of all currencies that make up the system. And there isn't one currency out there that's fiat currency that doesn't make up the system. Even the currencies of the BRICS plus nations, they're trying to get out of the system. That's why they're buying gold. So now I'm going to reference this book here, The Triumph of Gold, by Dr. Franz Pick. And it has an introduction by Dr. Henry Jarecki. And the reason I'm going to reference this is because I want to explain to you why I've known this is going to happen. It's not that I have a crystal ball. It's not that I'm arrogant and big-headed. And I know for certain that this was going to happen. I had a very good idea that it very most probably would happen unless the leaders, our leaders, monetary leaders, political leaders, academic leaders had changed things in the last 70 years. Unless they had done that, I knew that this was going to happen because of what I'm going to talk about here. So I'm going to go to the introduction of this book by Dr. Henry Jarecki, so you can get an idea of who Franz Pick was and what he said about gold and fiat currencies. Franz Pick, the world's foremost gold bug, and this book came out in the late 80s, is dead. Unfortunately, he died before, I think, he died while the book was being published or just before. A prolific writer and theoretician for the last 65 years. He was for 30 years the publisher of the Black Market Yearbook, which, in deference to the respectability of his central banker clients, he renamed Pick's Currency Yearbook. He and I were friends from the time he directed me in 1967 to the bullion firm I now lead until his death last week. What I admired about him was not his predictive ability, but his irascibility, energy, and rigid morality. True enough, he predicted, or said he did, the 1926 devaluation of the French franc, the 1931 devaluation of the British pound, and the meteoric rise in gold that emerged in the late 1960s. But those predictions were not, when one knew him, predictions at all. They were rather the words of Hosea declaring that the children of Sodom and Gomorrah were behaving badly and would thus come to no good. They were not any more than Hosea's words were, practical guideposts. Not at all. He knew no more about when gold or currencies would go up or down than anyone else can in this random world. So, yes, I don't know where gold's going to open on Monday or where it's going to be next Friday, or silver or anything else. What I know is that the way our leaders, the people who run the system have been acting, they're going to come up to no good, or their currencies are going to come up to no good. And what does that mean? Well, they've been borrowing and spending and printing like mad since Greenspan became chairman of the Federal Reserve with his Greenspan put. Of course, it accelerated after '08, and it's not going to stop. So that's why I've stuck with gold. And let's go and look at where we are now in terms of gold in the major currencies. And I've added a few to the ones that I spoke about in 2007. And there are some here missing, but I can tell you most of them are near all-time highs on a weekly closing basis. So here you can see I've got the dollar as the biggest chart, of course, and we've closed at a weekly high, all-time high. And then you've got the other smaller vessels, so to speak, that are sinking as well, that are gonna sink most probably before the dollar, or along with the dollar, really. They're all sinking together. Some are sinking faster, some come up for air, and then they sink again. But eventually, what it means sinking is that they're going to be worth very little in terms of gold. You're going to be able to get very little gold with like $1 or a pound, which means you're going to be having to pay a lot in fiat currency terms for an ounce. So as you can see, the Japanese yen, I spoke about the Japanese yen at the time, it was like 70,000 or something in 2007. While now it's at 312,000. So the Japanese yen has been really the darling of the major fiat currencies in terms of sinking. And why is that? Well, because Japan has the biggest national debt. Their central bank has been doing the most printing, the most manipulation of their bond markets. And we're going to follow Japan because they were the pioneers of QE as well. So you've got the Aussie dollar. That closed at an all-time high, weekly all-time high yesterday. The British pound, not quite. And why is that? Well, because the British pound has been a lot more volatile than all the major currencies. So I think last year we made a slightly higher weekly close, but the trend is the same, I would say. Same thing for the Swiss franc. The Swiss franc is probably the best of a bad bunch of fiat currencies, and that's why it's still not quite at all-time highs, but it's way above now the 2011 high, as you can see. Canadian dollar, that has confirmed a new weekly closing high, and so has the euro. And before we move further and look at Bitcoin and what I think is the story with Bitcoin, just wanted to let you know, for those of you who haven't yet and are thinking of buying gold or silver, there's still time. And you can thank Bitcoin for that, because if Bitcoin wasn't around, I think the whole fiat currency system would have been, obliterated already. It would have been gone. It would have sunk to the bottom, and you wouldn't be able to get any gold and silver right now. And with that, just wanted to point you to my affiliates. I have a couple in North America, ITM and Miles Franklin, and in the UK I've got Gold Investments. And all the details are below in the description. And I think Miles Franklin has got a special this week. If you call them and let them know that I directed you to them, ask them about the specials. I think it ends today or could be tomorrow. I'm not sure if they're operating on a Sunday. So let's go to Bitcoin. And you might be asking, why are you talking about Bitcoin? Bitcoin has outperformed all fiat currencies, even more than gold. Well, so have a lot of other assets, like Nvidia, like the Magnificent Seven. And I could go on and on and on. And you might say, well, but Bitcoin's money. Well, it might eventually become money. And I do give people the benefit of the doubt. They can think whatever they want. And I believe in the free market. And yes, if in 50 years' time, Bitcoin has taken over gold as money and people really like Bitcoin and have given up on gold, so be it. But I think the track record for gold and silver, for that matter, is thousands of years. Whenever there are monetary collapses, monetary mayhem, when empires collapse, gold is always there. Yes, gold is timeless. It doesn't matter if it was during the time of Alexander the Great, or the fall of the Roman Empire, or the fall of the Spanish Empire, or the fall of the British Empire, or the current fall of the West. Gold will always be there. And Bitcoin might very well be in 50, 100, 200 years. And we're going to, well, our descendants will have to wait and see. But with a track record of officially 15 years or so, I think it's a big risk to think that Bitcoin is the place to be in terms of protecting yourself against this ongoing fiat currency collapse. And one thing, though, that this Bitcoin fever has done is kept gold and silver under the radar. And I think, as I said a few minutes ago, that's really good because you can still jump off the Titanic or the other smaller vessels and get on the lifeboat. And the lifeboat, in my opinion, or lifeboats are gold. They're made of gold and silver, not Bitcoin. And one of the things that bothers me about Bitcoin is that, yes, on paper, mathematically, it looks really good. It's perfect, right? Even this guy here is saying, shocking math, how Bitcoin could reach $43 million. So, yes, maths are perfect, but human beings aren't. Psychology. I think whenever people say, "Oh, this is perfect," there's no way it could fail. I think you got to be careful with that. And so when you have people like this guy, I don't know his name is Mark Moss, saying that Bitcoin could reach 43 million, I would be very careful with that kind of statement. And I think Bitcoin is more of a Keynesian instrument, even though the Bitcoin crowd say that it's a free market thing and there's no control of the state. But it reminds me of Keynes and the way he tried to make the economy, humans, and money something scientific with his theory of money and credit and his equations as well. And we know how much of a failure Keynesian economics has been. You just have to look at where we are right now. And I tend to favor the Austrian school of economics because it doesn't believe economics is a science, but it's something to do with human action, right? Ludwig von Mises. And I said I was going to compare Bitcoin to a battle or a military campaign during the Napoleonic Wars. And why am I doing this? Well, because a lot of you might know about the French invasion of Russia. And the reason they wanted to invade Russia is because they wanted to compel, it says here, the Russian Empire to comply with the continental blockade of the United Kingdom. I don't really think Napoleon wanted to conquer Russia, but if you read about this campaign, you will see how easy it was for Napoleon to get to Moscow. And if you didn't know the final result, if you hadn't learned about history and you were watching a movie about this, you'd think, wow, Napoleon's won. It's a dead cert. But something Napoleon never expected, and that's where we come to psychology. It doesn't matter that France had all these belligerents with them. It wasn't just French troops that were with them. According to Wikipedia, you had Polish troops, Italian troops from Naples, from the Rhine Confederation, Switzerland, Spain. You had all these allies, and only Russia on its own. And as I said, if you didn't know how the final result was going to be, you'd put all your money on Russia, on Russia losing out and France conquering Russia. But that's not what happened, of course, because Tsar Alexander I left Moscow and burnt it to the ground. And Napoleon was there waiting to negotiate victory. And eventually he had to go back to France, and most of his army perished in the harsh Russian winter. So that's what I'm trying to say. There's no such thing as a dead certainty, not even something as perfect and mathematical as Bitcoin. And I will admit, even gold and silver, I still am not like going, yeah, this is a debt cert, it's going to go to 10,000, 15,000. And why? Well, because our leaders might get some religion and change things. But even if they did, I think gold and silver would be still very valuable. So that's what I'm trying to say. There's no such thing as a dead cert, but my money is still on gold and silver. So that's what I would say about that. This is a psychological war by the powers that be. They want to extract as much wealth as possible from you. And I think holding on to what they view as money is the best thing. And that's why I'm sticking with gold and silver. So I'm going to stop right here. I've gone a little longer than usual, but it is the weekend. And it is raining out there. So Rudy and I have been for a walk already. It wasn't raining, thank God, earlier. And yeah, I wish you all a great weekend. Take care. Bye.